So Justin Murphy posted earlier this week, like a long tweet thread going through some of his feelings about being a father, right? So just some highlights here. Am I a monster? It's been 4 years since I became a father, and I'm beginning to fear for my soul. The truth is, I just don't like being around kids for very long. Historically, this is not very uncommon among fathers, but today it feels as if it's almost illegal. It's causing me a lot of confusion and anguish. So he goes through and it goes on and on from there. I mean, that's like a pretty good summary, actually, how he breaks it up. And a lot of what he goes, like, one of the things he kind of boils down to is there's a finite period of time that he likes spending with his kids. But it feels like a lot of drudgery beyond that. And he doesn't get the same sort of, I guess, like what you would say, satisfaction that he gets from his work, or that he gets from maybe including like other things that maybe he did when he was single. So there's been like a lot of takes on this, right? So predictably, you've gotten a lot of takes that are just like, how could you say this? You're a terrible person. But my take is like a little bit different here, right? So number one, what makes this like a bad tweet to me is not the feelings the guy is having, which I'll get to in a minute, because that's kind of a different issue. But it's the fact that he's putting these feelings out in a public forum in this way.
With his damn name, yeah.
With his name, exactly. That's an issue because, like, one, as some people have pointed out, like his kids could see that someday, right? And then number two, the way in which it's written with his name attached to it comes across as like very self-aggrandizing, and it sort of reeks of like sort of modern therapy culture a bit. Like, are we in kind of agreement on that beginning part of it, or the beginning part of my take?
Yeah, it's a really gay tweet to begin with. Yes.
Yeah, and he's done this a couple of times, and something you'll see with like embarrassing stuff, whatever. So Twitter is the only place where you can actually get paid for being embarrassing stuff. And this is the other day when you were like, maybe you were saying like maybe iDubbbz was doing this stuff to like get money or whatever. Well, you can't like with problem with like, you know, being a YouTuber or whatever is you're just going to end up on clip channels. So like there's 1 million people who watch DSP on clip channels making fun of him, but like nobody watches DSP on his own channel. Now Twitter's different. And I'm not saying I'm just like, there's obviously this is like he didn't make this up out of nowhere. He's drawing these takes from somewhere, but you know, he's done this a couple times. Each time he's done these takes like this, he has become like, it's become the biggest thing in the world. I can't remember the last one. Do you remember the last one?
I do. I don't remember what it said structurally, but I do remember that he's done this like a couple times.
Yeah. Did for polyamory or something like that one time?
I don't remember him doing a polyamory thing.
He's like a married guy or something. It's probably the same thing. It's a similar type of stuff, whatever.
So I think this is the more like, I don't know if it's controversial part of my take here, right? So like we got that part out of the way. Like
okay,
this
well,
came.
Before you get to the controversial stuff, I'll just say, so just his basic take, whatever. I don't like doing all this stuff, whatever. I mean, yeah, join the club. I don't like getting up in the morning. I like going to work and stuff. I mean, okay, I'm with you.
Yeah, but there are actually some. He phrased this poorly, but like there are some truths in what he wrote here that I think get lost in a lot of the pro-natalist, anti-natalist debate. So, namely, when he talks about historical norms. So, I do think what he is saying is true, that men historically have not been supposed to have been participating in this stuff to the extent in terms of just sort of volume of hours in the way that is expected of them today. Like there were always some dads that did that because they wanted to, but it wasn't like you were somehow like an awful, terrible dad if you didn't want to spend like, a couple hours a day, every day after work with your kids. I mean, when I grew up, like I think my dad was a great dad, but he worked a lot, and that was definitely not a part of me being raised, right? Like, and he spent plenty of time with me other times, but just like not in the way modern dads are expected to do so today. And I do think that I don't think this is the primary driving factor, but I do think that like one of the whole, like many factors that get swirled into the people having less kids thing are some of these expectations that are put on fathers to do a lot of things that historically were like things that mothers were just expected to do, that by their like human nature, they are better at and get more fulfillment from. And number two, kids being expected historically in the past to just spend more time amongst themselves than they are today. So like that is what's getting lost here. Like his take on this is actually like not fundamentally wrong. He's just doing it in the lamest way possible. And I do think there's a very significant subset of men for which having children is much less appealing now, because they're like, well, I want to be like, I get my fulfillment out of like achievement and just like all these things that I'm supposed to take a back seat to because I have to be at like every dance recital. And I actually think that is a fundamental problem that is at least one of the factors affecting birth rates.
This is funny because I think it's a chicken and egg problem. You're right about that, but I think the the lowered birth rate means that there are fewer children around. So children playing amongst themselves, not really necessarily possible in the way it was before. And the people look at children differently because this is a now more scarce resource. And I guess you could go a step further if you wanted to and say that, yeah, in the past, it didn't really matter. When the birth rate was, was 4 point whatever, the TFR was like 4 to 5 people. If your dad didn't like being a dad, it didn't really matter because there's a lot of people, and it wouldn't be an emergency that everybody had to worry about, because it's fine if you don't want to do this stuff, then don't do it. That's not an option anymore. And now, in some ways, it seems that if you want to have children in post-industrial Western culture, you have to. It's like being a post-apocalyptic farmer. It's going to be a lot harder work than being a farmer was for your grandpappy. You're going to be doing different things than he did. The barrier is much higher, and you're suffering through things that aren't natural, but that is just the way things are now. You that's what child rearing's probably going to be.
That's part of it, but I also do think that like if expectations were different, that like part of this would work itself out. Like if you were not expected to do all of these things as a dad, right? Like that to go back to historical norms, you weren't expected to do. I think that you would have more kids in your own family, and this. Do you follow what I'm saying? And that this would work itself out, and that it's this. So my point is more so like the way I took your take there is like a little bit that it's fait accompli in the current situation, that like if you're going to be a dad, you have to be this more modern style of dad. I don't think that's true. I think it's actually entirely a like social contagion issue, insofar as like you have to be, because other people are going to be like, oh my God, you're like a terrible person if you're not doing all these things. If that expectation wasn't there, I think I have another part to this take, but before I get to that, like I think that problem would sort of sort itself out in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's neuroticism. People are neurotic about their children now in a way they weren't 50 years ago or whatever, probably before then, when there were more children around. So this leads to this kind of behavior. It's not actually necessary, but in your culture, if this becomes custom because everyone's neurotic about children because there aren't any children around anymore, then yeah, it does become something that's necessary. And it's not necessary as in like the physical way. No, you could Battleship Paradox thing. If you didn't need to do it, if you have the means to stop this tomorrow, but it won't happen because we're in the wrong end of the cycle. Like, there are ways, and all three of us know exactly what I mean, that you could fix this tomorrow, but that button's not going to be pushed, because just like the Venezuela invasion and the judges thing, it would be easier to go to the moon and build a hotel than it would be to change these facets of reproduction in America.
And by the way, there is, like, at an individual level, it's very difficult. By the way, I don't want to, like, give the impression that this is, like, easy to do. You can work this out if you are in an exceptionally good relationship with a good woman, right, who understands what you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. But, like, obviously that's very difficult to find one of those. So, like, I don't want to act like, oh, just go find a better woman, right? Because that's very, very difficult to do. And that also doesn't solve the broader society-wide problem of, like, these, like, crazy dad expectations that have been put out there. Part of the reason too, like, I think the rationale and reasons you gave, Merrick, are true, but part of this is, it is a weird overreaction to, like, the 80s, 90s deadbeat dad phenomenon, right? It's like an overcorrection against that. Similar to how, like, in the 80s and 90s, they told, like, young people getting pregnant and having kids was, like, the worst thing on earth. That was their solution to teen pregnancy, and that backfired. This is sort of like a corollary to that. Like, in that era, you know, really, I guess maybe even starting in the 70s, like, you had this sort of deadbeat dad thing, and there was an overreaction to that, which has created, like, a lot of these expectations.
Yeah. So there's a couple of layers to this. So there's the societal level, which I'm going to set aside because he doesn't seem to be talking about that. Because, I mean, you don't need to worry about that. We could worry about that, but that's a different conversation. But, like, you know, as far as you're concerned for yourself and your home life, well, we let women go to school now. There's more of us than there's more of them than there are of us. So, you know, just go ahead and play it by ear, but just assume that's not going to change by the time you'll be done with your parenting duty. So don't worry about that. So you must adapt to the situation you're in. You unfortunately have been doomed. You're in hell. You're unfortunately going to live in a non-ideal situation. Isn't that terrible? It's awful. So you're going to have to adapt. You're not going to be able to live a picture perfect life. So, you know, you brought the neuroticism. Now, the neuroticism is not new. The neuroticism has been around, like, for at least 30, 40 years. And this is, like, by the way, this is like a joke that, like, essentially non-white people tell about white people. You have these, like, white people that are like, oh my God, you know, did I give my kid gluten, or is our house under the power lines? Am I doing this? Am I doing that right? And, like, it's good that you care, but, like, it don't fucking matter. Like, we've had a zillion, like, U.S. presidents and nuclear physicists that their parents smoked a pack a day. Your mom smoked a pack a day while she was pregnant with you. Like, look, man, like, it's good that you care, but, like, we start talking about solving and stuff like that. You don't do that with a human being. You just kind of do what you can and get along, bro.
They can't help it. They, like, when you have like 1.2 kids, per person, they are going to be neurotic because you've turned them into, like, the children are our most valuable asset. Yes, that's true. Every parent loves their children. That's always true, no matter how many kids they have. But, like, the fact is, I'll take a historical example. Durant writes about this in his book about the Roman Empire, that, like, in the later stages, when their fertility rates has dropped so much that Roman people would get neurotic about their children, and then you would have these really anguished reports of, like, her only son died. Now her line is extinct. This is over. Like, her only child. That was it. when that happens, people are going to be, they're going to max everything. They in their mind, they have to do that in a way that you wouldn't and probably wouldn't have time to do if you had 4 or 5 kids. So I think it's a total chicken and egg thing. If tomorrow you change the birth rate, I think this would stop immediately. I really do.
Well, I mean, so not something you typically hear on right-wing podcasts, but you do make a favorable argument for the R against the K selection strategy for reproduction. And so, yes, I mean, ultimately, if you want to have the peace of mind, because if you're a K selected biology, you're going to be neurotic. If you want
that was an amazing burn, by the way. Thank you.
If you want to have the peace of mind of a R selected type, literally just if you want to solve this, have 4 or 5 kids. Then you're not. It's like, okay, 1 or 2 of them could be a dud, and you know what I'm saying. You won't be all this pressure or whatever. One kid might come out gay or a Democrat or something, like it wouldn't be a big deal. You have 4 or 5, you have a couple backups. You know what I'm saying? You have peace of mind. That's a good strategy. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I do think that that's part of it. I also think that it is like easier said than done. I don't have a solution to this, but it's just
yeah.
It's also just like, yeah, like I'm just not going to do that. Right. And like, if you're lucky enough to have kids with someone that would understand that, like, okay, like I'm not going to dedicate, like, it sounds like the wrong way to say it, but like the amount of time commitment that I'm going to dedicate to like this type of thing is just sort of has a limit. The second like part to this like take that I have is, in the past, I mean, I lived in the before times, right? So it was easier to just do as an adult the shit you wanted to do and just like whatever, your kid just had to deal with it, right? Like you would just like take them places or whatever, and the kid just had to like deal with it. And and this does go to the neuroticism thing, like not everything was revolving around the kid in that situation. You could do more stuff that you wanted to do as an adult without considering the kid, and the kid just had to like tag along and deal with it and figure it out. And I have a theory on this that part of this was like you had a higher expectation on the kid on how to behave in that situation. Like when I see like kids complaining in the store, sometimes it's like a silly example, but it's like I would have gotten killed for that kind of thing. And in fact, like if it was a store, I don't know if you guys were like this, if it was a store where there was like delicate stuff in there, I know you couldn't do this part of it today, but my mom would just make me wait outside in front of the door by myself while she went in and went shopping. And then when she was done, she would come back and get me, right? Like things like that. Or I'll tell you another way that like, this is sort of like, this is more of a sign than a cause itself. Like, there's this expectation now, like when you have kids, like, oh, well, you have to have like a big, boring car, right? Which used to be like, actually in the 90s, that was a minivan. And then over time that like, evolved into like a crossover SUV because you needed all this space. I don't know like where that came from because, when my sister and I were little, there were 2 of us. Like we sat in our car seats in the back of my mom's Trans Am because like we were little, like we had little things. And even when we were like grade school, middle school age, like my mom's the only person in my family ever to own a foreign car. She had a BMW 3 Series, that is not a large car. And the 3 Series back then was much smaller than today. But like we were kids, we didn't need a lot of leg room. Like if we went on a drive somewhere, like each one of us might have had like a book. We didn't have like a giant cadre of toys back there that we needed some like massive vehicle to accommodate like our lifestyles as children. You know what I'm saying? That's just systemic of like, there's been this odd inversion of like as a parent now, you're supposed to like make your entire lifestyle revolve around the kids in a way that was just simply not the case even in the 1980s when I grew up.
Status. Yeah, it's status. Yeah, that's one of the status games now. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the funny thing is the changes to these, like the SUV, the crossover thing, that all happened during times when the number of kids were going down. In theory, it would have been easier for people to put their entire family into a Honda Civic over those years because their families are getting smaller, but the vehicles are getting bigger. Yeah, that's about status.
Carrie it says in China they call the kids a one-child policy little emperors. So there used to be a thing like personality test, like horoscope, whatever. In the old days, they used to like, instead of being like, "Oh, what's your ENT? What's your personality test?" They'd be like, literally, "What's your birth order?" If I know your birth order, I know your personality. They used to do that.
So my point is kind of like a lot of the people that are the loudest, like pronatalists, are the biggest part of the problem because they're the most likely people to sort of guilt people who deviate from like what has become the modern norm, right? And I think I was raised as a kid at the very last portion of the old norms. Like most people that I knew growing up did not have minivans. SUVs weren't even really a thing. My dad actually did have an SUV, but SUVs were a different thing back then. He had like a Blazer, the original a GMC Jimmy, the original one with the 4-wheel drive dials on the wheels, like and it was a 2-door, and that was not like a vehicle that like people were buying for child purposes. You know what I mean? So I was before all that, and definitely like in the era where kids were along for the ride for like, if my parents wanted to do something, like either I got like dropped off at a babysitter or I just got dragged along and had to be well behaved. Like there were more expectations on me as the kid. Like, no, like this is a grown up thing that I'm dragging you to. So you just can't act like run around and do stuff like that. Right. Or like if my parents wanted to like go away for a week or two on vacation, I just got dropped at my grandma's house, dude. And like, that was it. Like there was no like complaining about it. It was like, we're doing an adult vacation and like, you're just going to your grandmother's house for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, like whatever, you know what I mean? Like, that's just how this is happening. I'm not bitter about any of this. Like, and in fact, I think that was the correct way to do it. And I think I don't have a solution to this because you can't just change social mores on these things. But I do think there's an irony that the very things that that a lot of the pronatalists would shame people for are like a lot of the same things that cause people to be a lot more apprehensive about having children. And by the way, like, I have no personal horse in this race. At my age, that ship has sailed for me, right? Like I'm approaching 50 years old. So like these are just my perceptions.